Hey everybody, in this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about immigration. I feel like, with the appointment of Tom Homan as the US border czar, or the guy in charge of border control, um, this is becoming like a hot button issue now. And even in Canada, of course, we're feeling that as well. Tensions are rising. People are now sort of maybe expressing themselves in a way they felt that they couldn't before. So I'm going to dive into a little bit, just share some of my thoughts with you. So let's get into it. Immigration is a topic. Hey everybody, if you are new to my channel, my name is Anita Krishna. I spent 20 years as pretty much as a newscast director, an assistant director with Global News, and they ended up firing me when I started questioning the COVID narrative, which of course everybody now knows was total, you know what. Okay, but whatever. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about immigration. And the reason I'm thinking about it is because I come from a family of immigrants, obviously. My dad came here in 1971. I think it was 70 or 71 from Fiji. He had to leave my mom and brother behind in Fiji. And when he came to work here, he started out working on a potato farm, but he was a welder by trade, even being so young, and he had to wait a really long time for bring my mom here. So he missed out on a year of my brother's life, which was extremely painful for him, painful for my mom. And eventually ended up getting a lawyer to get her here, and then he brought her here, and then I was born here a couple of years later. And what he came through the port of entry, he applied for his work permits and visas, and he came the proper way. And when my family came here, I was born here, like I said, at Vancouver General Hospital. We completely embraced, I probably said this in another video, but Canadian culture. We were the only brown family in the neighborhood just outside of Vancouver. And I experienced a lot of racism growing up. I experienced like walking down the street with my mom and my grandmom, who was visiting in a sari. She was wearing a sari. These friggin' rednecks were yelling, racial slurs at her, at my grandma. Like me, I'm a child. My mom, who's like 4'11", and my granny, who's not even, you're gonna yell at us as we're walking down the street because she's wearing a sari. Hey, F you. Right? Which is exactly what my mom said. She just turned around, all tiny little 4'11" of her, and she was like, but she was a fighter. Our whole family were fighters. That's where I get that from. So you don't have the right to swear at us. Get out of here, you redneck dummy. Anyway, we grew up with all kinds of racism, but we embraced Canadian culture. We embraced music. We embraced the food. We embraced our neighbors, and we had a lot of friends. My dad did, my mom did. We became Canadian, and I always sometimes say I'm like a coconut. I'm sort of brown on the outside but white on the inside. Although I am Hindu, we have both. You practice your own culture and religion and faith and cultural celebrations at home, but you're still Canadian. And I think that's how immigration works, right? But whatever. Okay, so with the recent appointment of Tom Homan, like I mentioned, it's got some people in a panic. I have relatives in the States, and they just think, oh, well, Trump is going to deport everybody. No, he's not. He's not deporting you. You came here, if you came here through the proper channels, right? But I have I have relatives in the States that are completely Democratic. They're Democrat to the core. They don't know how else to be, and they think that Trump is going to just deport everybody. But if you've never seen this guy, Tom Homan, in action, it is worth looking at him. This is a little clip of him with AOC, AOC, in Congress, as he's trying to set this little woman straight. I don't mean to sound sexist, but she's annoying as heck.
What I'm saying, this is not the only paper where we given the secretary numerous options to secure the border and save lives.
And so the recommendation of the many that you recommended family separation,
I recommend a zero tolerance.
which includes family separation.
Shut
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm gonna be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father
Mr.
from his
Homan, with
family.
all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum, you go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Okay.
Okay, I can't talk to you anymore. Okay. That's it. That's it. You do it legally, you come through the port of entry, you do it the proper way, you apply for the proper paperwork. When I was young and I graduated from TV school, I graduated from Ryerson, I wanted to go work in New York or in California because I thought they did the best television. I just can't rock up there as a Canadian and get a job. Do you understand that it doesn't work like that? I can't be like, I'm here, give me a job, let me work. You have to go through the proper channels. And I kind of tried to do that because I have so much family in the States, but it is impossible. Either you have to get somebody to marry you or get a workplace to sponsor you, or you have to get your family to sponsor you. You don't just rock up to the border like how you do nowadays by filling out a little app, the PB1 app or whatever it's called, and there you are. So watching him got me thinking a lot about like what's happening in Canada. And slowly, as the years have gone on, it's years ago in like maybe about 15 years ago, it was that normal, regular working families had a really hard time putting a down payment on a house because you'd save whatever. You come to the point where you have to borrow from your parents to put a down payment on a basic house that might have been built in the 60s or 70s. But your down payment would be usurped and discarded because you're competing with foreign money. Because people with foreign money could come in here, up your down payment. If you're going to put 20,000 down, for example, they're going to put 30, they're going to put 35, and you can't compete with that. And they would buy houses with no subjects. So you didn't need a home inspection or whatever. They would just buy it like that. So the seller's like, okay, like I'm not going to pass up on, thousands of dollars of extra money. But what that does is it puts regular working Canadian families in the position where they will not own a home. Again, you will own nothing and you will be miserable. That is what they seem to want. And the government let all that happen. But you couldn't say anything about it. However, this foreign money came into the province and into the country because you would sound like a racist if you said anything. So you just had to bite your lip and say nothing. And years went by, and you just accepted it, that this was the way it was. But now people are getting sicker and sicker of it. And things are bubbling over now. Now people are saying what they feel about subjects like this, and they're not holding back at all. Before I get to Canada, I'm going to just show you a clip of something from NBC. This NBC story is like from a year ago. And it talks about why we are seeing so many immigrants. We're seeing this because this is what our government wanted in the first place.
It's the most diverse city in North America. Ethnic communities in Canada's largest city growing quickly. The entire country getting a massive infusion of newcomers. The goal, bring in 1.45 million immigrants by 2025. Sean Fraser is Canada's immigration minister.
The number of newcomers that we welcomed the year prior to forming government was about 240,000 annually. And by 2025, we'll be increasing it to 500,000. So it's been more than doubled in a period of what will be just about a decade. So it's a pretty significant increase. But when I talk to the local business community, when I talk about communities like my own that have come from sort of small town and rural backgrounds, that we're losing people, it's essential that we continue to embrace immigration as a growth strategy.
So they want this. They claim, that we're losing people. They also claim that they wanted 1.5 million immigrants to come in by 2025 is because our population is aging. Our population is retiring. So we need the people to fill the jobs. It's like, okay, so you're going to bring in that many? Are you clearly thinking about what's going on? Now that's Sean Fraser. He's the old immigration minister. Right now we have Mark Miller. He's the new guy. Now the new guy, because of all this pushback, because of all this discussion, you've now yourself seen Trudeau say, okay, we're we had bad actors and we've brought people here under false pretenses and it isn't right. And we're cracking down on it right now because Mark Miller is saying now not everyone is welcome. Well, you had everything, you had it all open before. You could come in, no problem. And now that there's pushback, now you're like, well, hang on. But let's realize that this is a problem you created in the first place. And let's talk about a little bit about asylum and asylum seeking, because on Twitter, I saw this clip go around and I was not surprised, but I have some thoughts about how people responded to it.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Navjot Salaria. I came here in Canada in 2021 as an international student. After studying from York University, I got postgraduate work permit and I started working in an IT company at a big bank. So I am one of 200,000 postgraduate work permit holders in Canada whose work permits are expiring in 2024 and 2025. International students were sold the Canadian dream by government, colleges, and their recruiters with the slogan, study, explore, work, and stay. Our families suffered everything, selling land, taking on debt, and paying high tuition fees to make this dream a reality. During COVID, we supported the economy by taking on essential and unsafe jobs many Canadians avoided and were not willing to take. Not only that, international students contribute $30 billion annually to Canada's economy through tuition, rent, and taxes. But recent changes to PR eligibility and the closure of some of the important provincial programs have left many of us in limbo. The Trudeau government changed the goalpost without any regard for how it would affect many of us without grandfathering current and former international students into the new policies.
I mean, she does have a point because she's not wrong. Like, as much as I like to see Canada remain Canada, and of course I embrace immigration, we have tipped the bucket too much. But what she's talking about is not technically her fault in a sense. This was a problem created by the Canadian government. They did this. As you just heard in that clip I played you before, they wanted 1.5 million more people to come in here. So they wanted them in here. So so what happened is they quietly changed the restrictions. Prior to 2023, you needed a visitor visa, you needed a return ticket, and you needed to show that you had a little bit of money in the bank, and then you could come here. Just like you have to do with any other place that you visit, you have to go through the proper channels, get the right paperwork, and go through the port of entry properly, right? So, but in 2023, Canada, the Canadian government lacks the rules. And this is not just me saying this. This comes right from the bloody CBC, which I'll get to in a second. But the responses to this woman on Twitter who was complaining was like, people were not that nice. As I said off the top, is that people's opinions are changing. People are not as tolerant, right? We've been crushed so much that I think people are sick of it. But in some of the comments I was reading, people were saying, well, deport her, whatever, you got to go, your visa's expired. Well, geez, these people, they're so entitled. Look at these people. They're so entitled that they think they can stay here, that they're playing on white guilt. And I don't know. She's not. I don't know if she is. I mean, this is a problem created by the government. They asked all these students to come in here, or all these people. They relaxed all the rules, and now they're blaming them. They look like the bad guy. So I don't know what your opinions are on it, but that's kind of the way I feel. It's like you brought them here, and now you're complaining. So this is a piece from the CBC, believe it or not, the good old CBC, which I think did some good reporting here on why asylum claims are skyrocketing.
Traditionally, if you wanted to travel to Canada from one of the countries on this list, there are 140 of them, you couldn't just book a flight and expect to pass through customs. You needed a visitor visa. and to prove that you had plans to return home.
Mhm.
The reason this list exists, according to the analysts we spoke to, is that these countries are considered higher risk for asylum claims. Before 2023, if you were from one of these countries, you had to show a return ticket, you had to show where you were staying, and you had to prove that you had the money to support yourself while you were visiting. But then, at the beginning of 2023, the Canadian government quietly decided to waive those screening requirements for the rest of the year. The reason, they said, was to help reduce a massive backlog of over 2 million visitor applications in the system.
Because they were facing such large backlogs, the government came up with an internal policy of waiving the eligibility assessment.
So they were less
Does that sound like a smart idea? I don't think so.
stringent about reviewing some of these applications to come here on temporary visas because they just wanted to get through the backlog.
So they just want to get through the backlog or whatever. Well, why do you have this backlog in the first place? I mean, don't you have enough bloody government employees to sort this out? And because you want to get through a backlog doesn't mean that you're like, visas for everybody. Everybody come on in. You can't do that. And that's a separate issue apart from whatever else is going on the border, where a lot of drugs and real illegals are coming in unchecked. Like this is a huge problem. But this problem of people coming in through the proper channels, this influx of people that are starting to annoy society now, for lack of a better word, is a problem created by the Canadian government. So then the government also, just by doing all this, made it harder for some of these students to get work permits. So now what? Now what they do? What do they do? I think for some people you could say, oh, well, just go back. But think about it. I get that. I get why people would say that, but people sacrifice a lot to make a life, to come here, to get an education here. I don't think you can be so cold as to say just go back, when really that was not their fault, if I'm understanding this correctly.
There's been a huge increase in the number of international students. The numbers are quite staggering, frankly. I mean, they've nearly quadrupled in the last 9 years. We know there are over 1 million people here in Canada on a study permit last year.
That's over 1 million people on study permits, with only about 485,000 permanent resident spots. A few months ago, the government made it harder for many of them to get work permits after they finished studying, which was an attempt, they say, to deal with skyrocketing youth unemployment.
Mark and I and our government want those jobs to go to Canadians.
College graduates, as a general rule, will no longer be eligible for the postgraduate work permits. That's a huge change.
We're talking about tens of thousands of fewer students eligible for a work certificate that could be their golden ticket to permanent residency.
So if many of these students are no longer eligible to get a work permit or an extension of their permit, and their chance of getting permanent residency is slim, the only other option, if they want to stay here legally, is to file an asylum claim.
Pretty bad, eh? A pretty big mess. I mean, can you imagine if you were in charge of something and you messed with it that much? You messed up that much. Can you imagine anybody who goes to work day to day like we all do, and we screw up by making policies, and we screw up to that degree. We screw up to that high level of incompetence and not thinking anything through, unless they're all doing this on purpose, which could also be the case, right? Because you cannot be this stupid. Anybody could tell you, looking at these policies, this is maybe not a good idea. And the students that come here, they come here with like thinking, we've all been sold this idea is that you leave your home country to go to another country to look for a better life. And then you come here and all of a sudden you're sharing a basement suite with 5 other people, or you're sleeping on a mattress on the floor with a little curtain as a partition and paying, I don't know, $700 a month for that, while you can't find a job and you're blowing through all your savings or whatever. Oh yeah, nice sort of North American dream that's not happening. And one more thing about what's going on. I mean, we all move about society, and we can see that when we go to Walmart or we go to Tim Hortons or whatever, you're not actually seeing, the faces are changing, and they're changing because that's also what the government is doing. We all know that there's like temporary foreign workers and there's subsidies. So this is for the employers. This is the Work BC wage subsidy employer guide. But the Work BC wage subsidy program matches Work BC clients who require on-the-job training and work experience with employers who can offer support and supervision. Now, these are all private sector jobs. They're not like public sector jobs. So all these businesses like the Walmarts or like Save on Foods or whatever, they can all hire people and get these subsidies and get these kickbacks. I mean, anybody can, any restaurant or private business, right? So for example, for Work BC clients, up to 24 weeks, for the first 8 weeks, they'll pay up to $500 weekly. The second 8 weeks, up to $250, and the final 8 weeks, up to $150 weekly. But for the first 8 weeks, if you are paying somebody paying to have somebody up to $500, the government is basically subsidizing a business to pay that person's wage. So you're going to hire that person. Why would you hire a regular Canadian? And I have 2 teenage sons, and one of my sons was telling me, and one kid is looking for a part-time job. He's applied at Save on Foods. He's applied at London Drugs. He's applied at Tim Hortons. He's applied everywhere. He's a normal white kid with a white name, and he can't get a job. And my son also has a white name, and he couldn't get a job. He was looking and looking and looking, and long story, he ended up finding a job. He works with me, but it's like, I don't know if he didn't get that break working with me and my boss didn't hire him. I'm not sure what he'd be doing. Maybe he's supposed to change his name to like an Indian sounding name, and maybe that would be better. I don't know. I mean, that sounds really bad what I'm saying. But these regular kids where you should be flipping burgers and popping popcorn, you're not getting those jobs. Because why would an employer hire you? You get a subsidy to hire someone else. If you're in high school, you're probably only available a couple days a week with limited hours because you got to do your homework or your activities. It's a bunch of bloody nonsense is what it is. Anyway, I just thought I would just share that a little bit with you. It's like we are seeing workers change. We're seeing the face of workers change. But it's not entirely all their fault. I mean, I guess that's the point of what I'm saying is the government did this to us yet again. This is another thing of being badly governed and people, and we don't even know what they do. I mean, they get to know everything about us, but we don't really know what they're doing. But we know about this because we can see this, and that's kind of my 2 cents on this situation. I mean, I know we get frustrated when the identity of our country changes, but you still always must keep a Canadian identity, and you must always look after Canadians first. Then when you're ready, you can try to look after others, right? Like what they tell you on the plane, put your own mask on first. I can't believe I said mask, oxygen mask. And then you do your child or the person you're looking after, right? Okay. Anyway, that's my thought for today. That's my video for today. I hope you like this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Anita K 808. I'm also on Rumble. If you just search my name, Anita Krishna. Subscribing really helps us because this is how the network grows, right? My tiny little channel can grow and grow the more people that just click, 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 subscribe. Anyway, and if you like this video, wait for the end screen and you can click, click, click on the next video. And let me know if you enjoy that. Leave me a comment because I'm not sure if I am, maybe I need to be set straight on my opinions, but these are just my opinions. Okay, so thank you for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.